Directions for questions 18 to 20. At an airport, the airport loop bus means it travels in a circle, starts from long-term parking. So here you have long-term parking and travels to terminal A. So here you have terminal A. Then terminal B and then returns to long-term parking. So initially it goes to terminal A, and here in terminal A the bus makes 4 stops at terminal A, that is A1, A2, A3 and A4. So you have A1, then A2, A3 and finally A4 in this order. Then the bus makes 3 stops at terminal B. That is, in terminal B you have B1, B2 and B3. And in that order, the bus then stops at long-term parking. So from B3 then it goes to long-term parking like this. So it starts from long-term parking, then A1, A2, A3, A4, then B1, B2, B3 in this order, then it goes back to long-term parking and it repeats this loop. The bus then stops at long-term parking. From long-term parking, the bus proceeds to A1 and repeats the entire loop. At the same airport, an express monorail travels back and forth, that is in both directions, between A3 and long-term parking. So long-term parking and A3. So you have a to and fro bus between A3 and long-term parking. And another express monorail travels back and forth between B2 and long-term parking. So long-term parking and B2. So that is another express monorail. Loop bus travels the whole distance, and these are the 2 monorails. The loop bus and 2 monorails are the only ways to move among the stops above. Let us start now. To travel from long-term parking to A4, making the fewest possible intermediate stops, a person must take what? Now from long-term parking to A4. From long-term parking to A4 means he has to make the smallest number of intermediate stops. So the method will be like this. From long-term parking, he can take the monorail to A3, and then from A3 to A4. So first he has to take the monorail and then the loop bus from A3 to A4. So option D is the right answer. The monorail and then the loop bus. The monorail to A3 and then the loop bus. So option D is the right answer. Which of the following could be the second intermediate stop for a person traveling from A2 to B3? Now presently he is at A2. Now he needs to travel up to B3. We need to find out one possible second intermediate stop. One way of going from A2 to B3 is, first he can go to A1. A1 will be the first intermediate stop. Then the long-term parking. Long-term parking will be the second intermediate stop. Then he can take the monorail to B2. B2 will be the third intermediate stop, and then B3. So from A2 to B3, first intermediate stop A1, second intermediate stop will be long-term parking. So long-term parking could be the second intermediate stop. Hence option E, long-term parking, is the right answer. If all of the following trips are to be made with the fewest possible intermediate stops, the trip that requires use of both the monorail and the loop bus, that is what we need to find out. Now, so we need to find a trip that requires the use of both monorail and the loop bus. Now let us look at option D, long-term parking to A4. From long-term parking to A4, if you are going to travel by minimizing the number of intermediate stops, first he will have to take a monorail to A3. So long-term parking to A3, and then from A3 to A4 by the loop bus. So option D is the right answer. In this trip, first he will have to use the monorail and then the loop bus also. So both monorail and loop bus, both of them will have to be used for long term parking to A4. Hence option D is the right answer.